Caitlin, I just wanted to check to see if you were talking because you are muted.
Apologies for the false start. Thank you, Emily.
No
And
worries.
hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Caitlin Service. I'm the Program Manager of Regional Planning at DRCOG, and happy to be here today with Emily, Lauren, and Brittany to share what's coming up in the next call for letter of interest for 3 set-aside programs. The programs are designed to help project sponsors carry out planning projects that support regional goals, and they offer a really unique opportunity to support planning projects in your community with some substantial funding and support. So we will start off today by taking a quick look at the agenda. We'll start with an introduction to the funding opportunity, a breakdown of the available funding, go over some project partner eligibility, and then go over each of the 3 programs. And then at the end, there'll be plenty of time for questions. So from October 1st to November 15th, DRCOG will be accepting letter of interest from local governments and eligible partners who want to carry out a planning project through a technical assistance program. So this includes the community-based transportation planning, the livable center small area planning, and lastly, innovative mobility. And how it works is that project sponsors will submit a project idea that aligns with the goals of the program. DRCOG will review all the submissions using board-approved evaluation criteria, and then selected projects will move forward into planning. So we're able to hire a consultant team to lead the planning work, and DRCOG and the project sponsors have close collaboration and partnership throughout the process. The set-aside programs were approved as part of the 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, and they're detailed in the board-adopted TIP set-aside policies. And one of the highlights of the program is up here in bold that these projects are fully funded with no local match, thanks to DRCOG's agreement with CDOT to use state toll credits. So for the set-aside programs, DRCOG will ensure that the projects are fully funded. So again, no local match is required, no financial commitment from the project sponsors. We manage procurement, we hold the contract, and we hold an intergovernmental agreement with CDOT. And then we continue to support project management throughout the project and remove those administrative burdens that would have otherwise been associated with that funding for the project sponsor, and really help to ensure a smooth project delivery. And then in turn, we ask project sponsors to submit a letter of support from senior leadership. So it doesn't have to be an elected or appointed body. We don't require that, just someone with the authority to commit staff time and commit to active participation in the project. And the project sponsor will outline in that letter their commitment to attend regular project meetings, share data, assist with community engagement, and providing timely feedback on deliverables throughout the process. Sponsors would also act as kind of the local liaison wherever it's appropriate to keep your elected officials or appointed bodies informed of the project, and then ensuring that the groundwork is being laid for successful implementation of the plan. So in short, DRCOG helps enable and support the project success, and then we rely on this strong partnership with the project sponsor to ensure that the work is really grounded in community needs and well positioned for implementation. So this setup makes it much easier on project sponsors to use what is federal and state funding for these smaller dollar planning projects without having to handle the complex compliance requirements that typically come with them. And so in turn, it makes it much easier for local governments to take on planning projects that have any sort of alignment with MetroVision or the regional transportation plan, where there's that alignment there. This slide gives a quick overview of the funding across all 3 set-aside programs. You'll see these numbers again when we go through each of the programs individually, so I won't read them off the slide right now. But overall, there's around $3 million available for projects during this call for projects. And again, no local match required from the project sponsor or the applicant. Project proposals can be submitted by a wide range of eligible entities. So this includes county and municipal governments, regional agencies, transportation management organizations or associations, otherwise known as TMAs or TMOs, and then nonprofits that serve a regional transportation purpose. And state of Colorado offices and agencies are also eligible to apply. For non-governmental organization, it is important to note that proposals should include a documented support from relevant local governments. This is just because the outcomes of the planning efforts are often implemented by government agencies, so that strong coordination and alignment there is essential for success. And then last note, just due to the funding source, the projects must be located in and/or provide benefits to the official metropolitan planning organization boundary of DRCOG. So we can start off by going into livable centers, and then we'll go into the other two programs individually as well after this. A total of $2.5 million is set aside for the Livable Centers program in the 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. For this upcoming call, we expect to award up to $835,000. We do recommend that projects request at least $100,000 to make sure that they're well-resourced and able to meet project goals. In the last round, the selected projects ranged between $100,000 and $300,000, although there's no official cap on the maximum amount. The funding will go towards consultant-led conceptual plans, so note that does not include any design or engineering, and the focus is on small area plans that enhance livability in key central locations that are connected by multimodal transportation. So I'll also note that these are small area plans, so this would be kind of like a small center within your community, not a citywide or countywide plan typically. The program goals are derived from MetroVision, so this program is intended to support centers and nodes and their connections to the region's multimodal transportation system. And the program is designed to support small area planning efforts that connect a land use or housing strategy with a multimodal transportation strategy. So you'll hear those two themes kind of repeated throughout the remainder of this focus on livable centers, is that it's a center or node on a regional multimodal transportation system, and it's integrating your land use and or housing strategy with your multimodal transportation strategy. Those are really the core tenets of the program if you take away anything from this section. I want to note that livable centers doesn't refer to any sort of formal designation in MetroVision or at DRCOG or anywhere else. It's meant to be a flexible term. This could be your town center, a transit station area, an employment hub. It just needs to be a key central location within your community that will look different from every community, but then also connected by the region's multimodal transportation system. When you are filling out your letter of interest, it will ask you to describe how your project location functions as a livable center in your community, and also describe how it fits into the multimodal regional transportation system. Again, there's no like formal requirements or functional classification or any formal requirements around either livable centers or around this connection to the multimodal regional transportation system. But to help assess this, I do encourage you to go to the DRCOG data tool, and that web address is here on the screen and linked on the program webpage, and encourage you to reference these layers when drafting your response to this question within the letter of interest. And that can kind of help you understand how it kind of connects into that regional multimodal transportation system. And then also, as you are orienting and communicating about your project, make sure that you do include or emphasize how your project integrates that land use or housing strategy with a multimodal transportation strategy. So as you might have derived from the earlier part of this presentation, really the geography and the program goals are the emphasis of the program. The eligible project types are really broad. There's a lot of flexibility in the types of planning work that can be done. This is meant to be able to be tailored to whatever your project needs are, whatever would best support your community at this time. Some examples that were selected from the last round, there were several like housing strategy near transit areas. There was also small area planning near transit station areas. We had a multimodal transportation connectivity study for a housing authority. So again, that housing and transportation connection there. And then we also had kind of a TDM study for a major employment center. So again, project types are flexible, but make sure that it connects that land use or housing strategy with your multimodal transportation strategy, and that the project location is a center or node on the regional transportation system. So with that, I will pass it off to Brittany and Lauren to go through the community-based transportation planning program.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. So my name's Brittany. I'm a multimodal planner at DRCOG in the sub-area and project planning team. So one of our funding streams is the community-based transportation planning set aside. So this one's a little bit different in the amount of money and the recommended project minimums. So we have about $2.5 million to allocate, and about 650 to 1.3 million available for this call for projects. So for the minimum, it's a little bit lower than livable centers. We're looking at $100,000. This is also a technical assistance program, so we would help the applicant who is selected go through the RFP process to hire a consultant to help with the process of the study. And this is specifically to help with historically marginalized communities. So that can be, geographically noted, or a specific group of a population that you can explain why they're historically marginalized. So it may or may not kind of line up with the DRCOG index directly. And then community engagement's a really big piece to this. So we really focus heavily on this being a community informed set aside program. Great. And then we do have a couple main goals. You can also find these on the DRCOG page for the sub area and project planning, like the corridor and the community-based transportation planning set asides. But basically just looking at access to, good transportation, reduce, concerns with safety, anything that like addresses the disproportionately impacted communities in the area. Often these can be related to multimodal improvements, but we have had other things like microtransit that have been funded through this. And we do try to come up with innovative engagement methods, and we have partnered with several local community-based organizations to improve our reach for engagement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Kurgis. I'm a multimodal planner at DRCOG, working primarily with the community-based planning set aside. I'm just going to go over some of our eligible project types for this set aside. So really, any kind of transportation study or planning effort related to improving mobility for historically marginalized communities. So that can be a wide range of project types, including corridor projects, looking at active transportation, safety improvements, microtransit, school transportation. We've done quite a few of these so far. The Montbello Loop and 303 Artway is looking at improving walking and biking in Montbello and Northeast Park Hill. We've done a couple of corridor studies, the Pecos Corridor and the 92nd Avenue Corridor study. Sometimes these studies also have a particular kind of focus. So for 92nd, for example, we're really focused on pedestrian safety for that corridor. Brittany mentioned we also do microtransit studies, and we've done one school transportation plan as well. So, as Brittany mentioned, as long as your project is addressing those communities that have historically been left out of the transportation planning process, whether that's like your city itself is scoring high on DRCOG's equity index, or maybe there's kind of a subset of the population, people without access to a vehicle, or older adults, as an example, you could potentially make that work for this set aside. And just a couple pictures from some of our projects that we've done, maybe to give you some ideas about what you might want to include if you're interested in this set-aside program. So on the left, this is a picture of a demonstration project that we did for our Edgewater school transportation plan. And so this happened towards the end of the project. The city of Edgewater was able to go out kind of overnight and put these temporary materials in, restripe and make one section of the street in front of Lumberg Elementary one way to help kind of with flow of traffic for pickup and drop off and support like a hug and go operation. Um, and then we also partnered with Edgewater Collective for this project. So they're a community-based organization that works in Jefferson County, and they're really tapped into that community, especially with the schools. And so if you have any partners in mind that maybe are nonprofits in your community, that could help support engagement, that's something that can be really helpful for kind of reaching those community members. And then on the right here, this is a picture from a pancake breakfast that the City of Federal Heights Fire Department puts on every year. And so this is just an example of, some of the engagement efforts that we do as part of this program. So if you have any kind of existing events or annual events going on, at the city level, just kind of thinking about some of those to include as part of your letter of interest. Okay, so we do have two questions specific to this set aside. And the first one is about community engagement. So as Britt said, community engagement is really core, a core part of this set aside. So we used to be projects and plans that are really driven by the community. And so we want to hear about any ideas you might have for engagement. Think a little bit about which communities in particular that you might want to engage. Are there any CBOs or other kind of organizations that you could partner with? And then thinking a little bit about some engagement challenges that you've had in the past. We've all had them. What have those looked like, and how maybe could we improve those for this current project that you're thinking of? And then the second question that we have for this set aside is just describing a little bit about what your community's need is. So what exactly are those transportation barriers, particularly for those marginalized communities, and how urgent are these issues? And then lastly, do you have any kind of lack of planning capacity that would be important to note? So I'll pass it off to Emily now, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have about this set aside at the end.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren and Brittany. I am Emily Lindsay. I manage our active and emerging mobility program at DRCOG in our transportation planning and operations division. And so I'm excited to chat with you all about the innovative mobility set aside. Caitlin, if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. So the Innovative Mobility Set Aside is a new set aside in the 2024-2027 Transportation Improvement Program. We have about $1 million a year for the set aside program. This call for projects has just over $1.5 million available for this call for projects, and the recommended project minimum is $250,000. We do love to see a partner in multi-jurisdictional projects, so we do not have a maximum project size. Of course, we only have a certain amount available, so you can use that with your discretion. But we do love to see partnered approaches and have awarded in the past. Is kind of, demonstrating our commitment to fund projects of a variety of sizes. But this is really technical assistance funding for consultant or vendor services in the planning, preparedness, feasibility analysis space. And we have funded a variety of projects about this in the past. This was really designed to invest in collaborative kind of learning opportunities, figuring out how we can further innovative mobility, address some of the challenges posed by transportation technology, and really learn together as we implement a variety of technical assistance projects. And so the program goals, pretty briefly, again, are related to advancing emerging mobility. It's thinking about all of the kind of new and innovative solutions that are associated with transportation challenges that might be related to either transportation technology or innovative approaches. It really is focused on improving accessibility by supporting innovation in the sector across all modes. So really thinking about transportation from a holistic perspective. And like I mentioned, investing in this collaborative learning approach so that there are transferable outcomes and folks can learn from these new and innovative projects. All right, so similar to the other set-asides, I think we have kind of a main focus, which is innovation in the transportation space. And as such, there are a really wide variety of eligible project types. So we've outlined a couple just to give folks some ideas, but I would encourage you to think outside of this box because the umbrella of innovative mobility is quite large. We have seen some curbside management focused, either plans or tools, emerging mobility plans. This might fall into the shared mobility space, like microtransit or shared micromobility, but either kind of understanding the feasibility, planning for implementation, developing tools, conducting analysis in that space, all are eligible activities. We've also seen some overlap with the mobility data and analysis space. And so again, kind of harnessing the power of new data sources, new kind of analysis tools. Those are also eligible activities. I think, again, if it focuses really on that innovative piece, shared mobility, feasibility, and implementation planning, these can come hand in hand. You could do them separately, kind of assessing the feasibility, or if you've already assessed the feasibility, kind of figuring out what the next steps look like as you implement or develop a plan for implementation. And this can really kind of set you up for, future, if it's infrastructure or service funding. So using that technical assistance perspective to set you up for implementation. Mobility hub studies and plans. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but just meant to give you an idea of some of the types of projects. And we have recently funded a couple of different projects in this space, and they all are really different, which is exciting. So to give you just a flavor of the kinds of projects that have been funded in the past through this set aside, we have a Bike Plus Data Fusion project that is joint with the city of Boulder and the city and county of Denver. We have funded a docked bike share feasibility analysis in Golden. We're working with Denver on a digital twin for the curb. So thinking about, digitizing the curb data. We are working with Parker to think about the future of microtransit down there, and with Thornton on a near miss analysis project. We've also funded some micromobility work that is part of a livable centers project as well. So there's a lot of variability, and I encourage you to think outside of just the bounds of what we've talked about, because there are certainly a lot of other components that would be eligible as well. All right, so as you're thinking about innovative mobility and a project that might fall into one of these three or all of these three set-aside buckets, I think to be competitive in an innovative mobility project proposal, it really does have to align with Metro Vision, has to align with our regional transportation plan priorities. We really want to see a commitment to collaboration and partnership, whether that's within your organization or across jurisdictional boundaries. I think that is a huge component of this learning piece. We want to see, I think, as the name suggests, innovative practices, different techniques or elements within your project, or that your project will set you up for. I think that scalable, replicable, transferable piece is also really important when we think about innovative projects, right? Sometimes we might not have a best way to do something like this. And so we can use these projects to explore that way, think about contribution to understanding best practice, or really learning things that do or don't work. So that piece is very important. Readiness of the project partner. I think this is something that is very common across all three of these set-asides. is really showing us how you're ready to step up, be a good project partner, and commit to this work. So we are excited about that component. And there is also a scoring criteria for innovative mobility as to try and understand the link to marginalized communities. And you can see all of the info about kind of scoring in our set aside policy, which includes evaluation criteria. All right, so that was a quick overview of all three of the different set asides that are accepting project proposals. And I'm going to walk you through the application process. And this is true for any of the three set asides. So if you are interested in livable centers or community-based transportation plans or innovative mobility, the next slides will cover all of those. All right, so the application process, typically we had done them kind of in separate processes so that folks would kind of apply for one set aside. We would evaluate and propose a suite of projects. Individually, we thought, how can we make this a little easier for folks that might have projects that could potentially be eligible for multiple set-asides? And so we decided we would streamline the application process, like Caitlin mentioned. And so this is what this process looks like. We have already opened the call for projects on October 1st. And here we are, step one at the informational webinar. Congrats, we've made it. The next step really is to think about your project, and please reach out to DRCOG staff to discuss your project ideas. We can share a bookings link in the chat. So you can chat with staff from all three of these set-asides, or you can contact us individually if you have an idea that really feels like it just belongs with one set-aside. But we really highly encourage you to reach out to us because we can kind of guide you in terms of eligibility, competitiveness, help you if you need assistance in any way, like understanding the process or the difference between some of the set-asides. So please reach out if you have an idea. The next step then would be to fill out our letter of interest application. We've tried again to simplify this a little bit. We do have a copy of the questions available, which I can drop a link in the chat too. And this is all completed via an online form that asks you a bunch of questions about your project, including a high-level description of your project concept and estimated project cost. So once all of those applications are submitted by November 15th, staff will review and score the projects. And then ultimately these go through our committee process and to our board for approval. So we're anticipating doing that in early 2026, where we'll start with our Transportation Advisory Committee, who will make a recommendation to the Regional Transportation Committee, and then ultimately a recommendation to our Board of Directors for approval of the final list of projects. After the board has acted, we are able to work with the selected project partners to develop a more specific scope and schedule and kind of get into that procurement process for vendors and really map out the timeline. All right, so the letter of interest application is a pretty easy to use online form. We use an online software called FormStack, and you can use the same application to apply across set-asides. So if you have a project idea that fits with both livable centers and community-based transportation planning, you can just check those two boxes. You'll see if there's any additional questions that are specific to the set-asides, but really there's like one or two of those. Aside from that, all of the projects apply to all of the set-asides at large. We do have a link. Thanks, Lauren, for dropping that into the chat. So you can check out the questions that are on the application, and you can see the actual form if you would just rather kind of see what that looks like. It's just that single page that the link brings you to. And if you do have any questions ahead of time, please reach out and we are happy to chat through those questions. And so projects will be evaluated for each of the set-asides that you're applying for. So if your project applies to innovative mobility and community-based transportation planning, your project will be evaluated according to two different sets of criteria, which are outlined in our policies for fiscal year 24 to 27 transportation improvement programs, set-asides program document. It's a mouthful, but we can drop that in the link as well. Each of the set-asides has some unique components to the scoring criteria, and there are some that really apply across all of them. So things like the connection to MetroVision and our regional transportation plan, you'll see across all of those. thinking about kind of project and partner readiness. You'll see that there. But I encourage you to check that out based on which set aside or set asides that you're interested in applying for. So, most important, some key dates. We've already opened the call for projects, and it is open for about a month and a half. Letters of interest are due November 15th. And so if you do have any questions for staff, make sure you get them in ahead of that date so that we have time to chat with you either via email or can hop on a quick Teams call. We are happy to do that. Project evaluation will occur in November, December, potentially January, depending on how holidays and how many applications we get. And then we are planning to bring the recommendation, like I said, to the Transportation Advisory Committee in early 2026. And then it will go through kind of that Regional Transportation Committee and our Board of Directors for ultimate approval. We're hoping to kick off the consultant procurement process in spring of 2026 with our project partners. And so that's where we will have agreed upon kind of scopes that we'll put out in an RFP. DRCOG, again, really puts out this RFP and conducts that competitive selection process in partnership with our project partners. So they will sit on this vendor selection committee as well. So that will happen in the spring of 2026, and we will kick off some of the projects starting in summer of 2026. We do have obviously a certain amount. We can't, issue 20 different RFPs at the same time, so we will stagger them. So that summer 2026 is kind of on the earlier side. We do anticipate staggering some projects depending on the scope and the timelines that we're working out with project partners. Typically, these projects are 12 to 24 months, depending on what the schedule and scope looks like. But if you have questions about, your specific project or timeline, please feel free to reach out. All right. And now we have plenty of time for questions, discussions. For any of the set-aside project managers, we are happy to jump in. I do see a question right off the bat here about when is the last date that awarded funds can be expended. So it typically is tied to when your contract is executed with a vendor. So like I said, it's typically 12 to 24 months after that contract has been signed with the vendor. What we are using is federal fiscal year 2026 funds for this call for projects. And so we're hoping to kick off projects by the end of federal fiscal year 2026. And then, like I said, depending on the timing of the project, those can be 12 to 24-month projects. All right. And the next question I see, again, if Caitlin or Lauren or Brittany wants to jump in on these, feel free. I can try my best here. Julie, to your question about this funding source, these are federal transportation funds. These are Surface Transportation Block Grant funds that are we match with state toll credits. So there is no match required for project partners, and DRCOG essentially retains the funding so that we don't have complicated IGA processes associated with reporting and switching funds amongst agencies. So we kind of treat each set aside kind of as a project. So they are federal funds, yes. And let's see, can innovative mobility include both planning for a mobility hub and implementation of some of the small elements? So this is really mostly for planning. You could have like a high level concept kind of design, concept planning associated with the project, but is really not made for infrastructure or like materials in that sense. But that's a great question. I think for something like a mobility hub plan or concept plan, this is a great process to bring you through to develop a list of projects so that you can seek future implementation funding through our TIP process or through other means. Jenny asking the hard questions here. They are tied to federal funds. Is there a risk of them disappearing? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. We are pretty confident that our transportation funds will remain. We have federal transportation authorization is separate from the kind of annual budget process that happens in Washington. So these transportation funds are authorized for multiple years. So they're not tied to a budget shutdown or an annual budgeting process. So at least through fiscal year 27, we are remaining positive. Other questions from folks? And you don't have to put them in the chat if you want to unmute and ask them in person. You are welcome to do that as well. Let's see. Joe.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I have another question about the innovative mobility set aside. I understand that these are really more for the planning and like feasibility sort of projects, but I wanted to ask specifically about any kind of like implementation projects that would be eligible. One that my organization has in mind is we are working on a multimodal trip planning tool. And we want to do some enhancements to that tool, like make allowing it to be used as a phone app instead of just using a web browser, allowing a user to have like live turn-by-turn directions like you would in Google Maps, things like that. Would that be something that might be considered an eligible project or no?
So the digital world, it does complicate things a little bit for the set asides. I think if you're developing like a concept of operations for a digital tool, absolutely. That would absolutely be eligible because that's kind of saying, what do we need to do? How do we set this up? So something like a concept of operations would absolutely be eligible for a digital product. Some baseline data development also would be an eligible activity. I think where we want to make sure we're not like crossing any kind of lines is when we think about like more like subscription-based services or like things that we can't make sure are maintained at the close of the project. So if it's like a one-time expense to, build something out, I think that's something that we could consider. But if it's like an ongoing expense that at the end of the project period wouldn't be able to be maintained or would have additional costs that we don't know where they're coming from, I think that's when it kind of veers a little bit into the less eligible.
I see. That's great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Kaylin, you want to take this one?
Happy to. So the question is whether the letter of interest is that the entire application or is the application separate from the letter of interest, which comes later? So right now, what we currently anticipate to be the full process is just submitting the letter of interest form, which Lauren linked above, and then evaluating the projects and recommending them on to the Transportation Advisory Committee, Regional Transportation Committee, and then the board for final selection. That is how we were able to do it last year. The tip set aside policy does allow for, if needed, like a secondary application process. So how that would look is that the letter of interest, then from there you would be like invited to do a secondary application. We haven't had to do that in the past, and that's not what we currently, we don't have any indication that that would be necessary for this round, but the tip set aside policy does give the availability to do that, although it's not our default way of doing so. I hope that answered the question. Feel free to jump in if there's any more clarity from the team.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had to do that for our set aside. But just maybe having that as an option if we find that there's a letter of interest submitted where we kind of just need some more information. That would kind of be the instance in which we would request more information from you all.
I have a quick question, Denise. Beltran with Adams County. So how do I schedule a meeting with any individual person from DRCOG?
Yeah, great question. So if you already know the specific program that you want to apply for, you can reach out to us directly and we'll link our emails in this chat. So it would be me, Caitlin for Livable Centers, Emily for Innovative Mobility, and Brittany and Lauren for the community-based transportation planning. Or Emily just dropped this bookings link into the chat. And so that is how you would be able to schedule a meeting with all three programs if you kind of want to discuss your project in the context of multiple programs. We can do a last call for not call for projects, a last call for questions. I'm seeing things kind of die down in the chat, but I welcome anyone to unmute themselves or type any last thoughts in the chat.
Would you mind just saying who's who again, for which program? I think Caitlin put in Livable Centers beside her name. Oh, Martin's asking the very same question in the chat. Okay, thank you.
It's a great question. So yes, I do Livable Centers program and I'm Caitlin Service. Emily doing the Innovative Mobility program, and then Brittany and Lauren doing the Communication Planning program. And I'll reiterate that in the chat so everyone has it in writing.
And that should set aside websites as well. So if you just need to search the set aside, it should be list the staff contact person at the bottom. But when in doubt, you can reach out to any of us and we will direct you the right person.
Thank you, you guys.
Right. Well, we look forward to seeing some of the meetings come in through the bookings link that was shared in the chat. Again, I'll repost so it's the top thing on the chat, the set aside overview, which kind of had a link to everything. So that if you didn't keep track of all 10 links that were shared in the chat today, you could access them from one central page. It's actually just a news item on the DRCOG homepage on drcog.org. And then after that, we can close out the webinar. Oh, great. Emily has put it in the chat. So I want to thank everyone for attending today and look forward to some subsequent discussions about your project proposals, and just make sure you're getting those in by November 15th. Thanks. Bye.